Hello everyone, welcome back to another Phasmophobia video. And today we're going to go over some scoring I did to truly figure out what the hardest ghost is in Phasmophobia. Now you're probably wondering what determines how hard a ghost is. So I actually have a few different categories for scoring. We have survivability, which is how dangerous a ghost is during a hunt. This also factors in how early or late a ghost hunts. And the higher the score for this category, the more dangerous. Then we have investigation difficulty. How hard is this ghost to identify? Is it misleading or simply impossible to distinguish from other ghosts? Unpredictability, which is pretty self-explanatory. Strength of abilities, which is also pretty self-explanatory, but also includes things like hunt speed. And the last category we have is arbitrary points. I feel like this is a good category to have, as it's hard to fit every little thing about a ghost into a specific category, so having kind of a general broad category like this helps identify more random and one-off things for each ghost. Each category, the lowest amount of points can be a 1 out of 5 and the highest is 5 out of 5. And then all ghosts will have their score added up, with 25 being the most points. You probably know how this goes by now. Just a quick reminder, some of these ghosts scored very similarly or identically, so just because one is over the other doesn't mean that there's a huge margin in between how dangerous or easy one might be. And this list is going to start from easiest to hardest ghosts. So starting off, the first handful of easier ghosts are going to be pretty standard, but first off we have the Obake. Now this ghost doesn't really pose too much of a threat. It's pretty easy to figure out with UV being a forced evidence for it and seeing the unique Obake fingerprints. Pretty standard ghost, it's fun, interesting, and I give it a little bit of credit as the shapeshift ability can be pretty easy to miss, but other than that, it's kinda just a standard ghost. Next we have the Poltergeist, which is another standard ghost. Nothing too unpredictable or dangerous, and it's pretty easy to identify. Its ability can theoretically drain a bunch of sanity very quick or even early on, but it really just doesn't use this ability often enough to really factor in how dangerous it could hypothetically be. It's a fun ghost, which is great, but we're trying to figure out what the hardest ghost is here. Next, we have the Spirit, which is a very generic ghost with no strengths. Its weakness actually makes it less dangerous. I'll give it some credit as it can be kind of hard and subtle sometimes to try and test for it, as you need to smudge it and set a timer. Sometimes you'll miss the ghost with the smudge and can kind of just be annoying. At least with Obake and Poltergeist, you have more confidence in your answer and testing. The Spirit really is just generic ghost. Next we have the Shade, which is not too dangerous but just kind of annoying sometimes. And once you've been in the match for a little too long, it becomes obvious that it's a shade, but it's just too subtle, and it can also roam to adjacent rooms and kind of throw you off with a ghost event or interaction. Just pretty annoying to deal with. Next, we have the Jinn, which is another pretty standard ghost, but if the breaker is on, the Jinn will be able to close distance much faster during a hunt. It's not necessarily hard to survive, but definitely more deadly than the standard ghost. Paired with the fact that it has an ability to drain a player's sanity by 25% within a radius around the ghost, it can be pretty deadly depending on how many players are in your game. With 4 players, your team's average sanity would only be affected by about 5%, but if you're playing solo, that would be a full 25% sanity hit. Not a very hard ghost, but its line of sight speed up with its invisible sanity draining ability, it gets a little bit of credit. Next we have the Myling, and the Myling can be kind of annoying, at least to test for on some maps. And it being on the quiet side is kind of a benefit, especially if it's on a bigger map, you might not even know that it's hunting. Just kind of annoying to test for on some of the smaller maps, but nothing too out of the ordinary or dangerous. Next we have the Goryo, which I feel like is a very annoying ghost. It seems like it just takes ages to catch the Goryo dots, and the Goryo dots is also very easy to miss, even if you're paying close attention. And since it kind of hangs out in the same area, sometimes early on it's easy to confuse with a Shade or maybe even a Wraith. It can just be kind of hard to identify as the dots are annoying to get, but isn't super dangerous. Next we have the Onryo. And the ability to hunt after blowing out 3 firelights can sometimes be lethal if you're not exactly prepared or paying attention, especially early on if you're getting photos of it blowing out a candle or going for the objective. It's kind of an added strain to your supplies and has some potential to be lethal early on. It's not really that dangerous, but if you're not paying attention, it's gonna really bite you in the butt. Next we have the Phantom, which I feel like this ghost has a lot of strengths, as the Phantom can roam to a player's location and will drain sanity by 0.5% per second during pseudo line of sight during ghost events and hunts. And the Phantom's also very hard to see during a hunt. I feel like it usually surprises me jumping around a corner or covers way more ground than I expect it to during a hunt. Overall, I feel like the Phantom is pretty dangerous, but maybe not one of the most dangerous. Next we have the Deogen, and the Deogen, it can be easy to get cornered if you're not prepared, but given it hunts later and later into the game you'll probably have a smudge stick, I don't find myself getting cornered and dying too often. To give it some credit, its ability to cover a large amount of distance in a short amount of time is a very powerful ability. Even if it does get very slow near you, it can still sometimes be hard to juke out, or if you don't have enough open space, you might just get cornered. Especially if you aren't aware that it could be a Dio, just pray it doesn't hunt and find your hiding spot. Next we have the Yurei, and although it might not necessarily be super dangerous, with how annoying it is to identify, it's pretty high on this list. The only way to tell a Yurei is by the door slamming ability, which a lot of the doors it doesn't even work on, or some of the rooms just don't even have a door to touch to begin with. I feel like the ability is already very hard to see, let alone in a room that either doesn't have a door or the door is broken and the ability cannot activate. Next we have the Yokai, which can be very dangerous if you're using the in-game voice chat. It can also be kind of hard to identify. Sometimes the hunts you just get bad luck where it decides to roam and it might seem like it's either ignoring you or coming towards you while you're testing for it. But just the fact that it can hunt very early if you're using the in-game voice chat makes it kind of a harder ghost, but is dependent on if you're even using the in-game chat in the first place. But just has some potential to be deadly and can be a little annoying to test for sometimes. Next we have the Thaye, which is fast and deadly during hunts. The Thaye can also hunt pretty early unless it begins to age quickly. The Thaye isn't higher on this list as its ability directly weakens itself over time. It becomes less lethal, and if the Thaye starts aging fast enough, you might even completely avoid hunts entirely. I can remember this happening to me a few times, and we end up thinking the ghost is either a shade or a yokai, and it actually just turns out to be a Thaye that just started aging very quickly. So just considering the fact that you will age the Thaye while you're in the ghost room, but you're just naturally also going to be in the ghost room testing for it, you can see why the Thaye isn't one of the top ghosts on this list. Next we have the Hantu, which can be very dangerous even if the breaker's on, as neighboring rooms might be slightly cold as well. Especially on bigger maps, entire hallways will be cold, allowing the Hantu to move very fast and giving it a lot of space to do so. Just make sure you have some crucifixes down and hope you figure out the ghost before it starts hunting. Next we have the Revenant, which is a very deadly ghost. Not necessarily hard to identify, but one wrong move and you're going to be done. On smaller maps, I found it very easy for the Rev to start the hunt, detecting your equipment, making it run towards you very fast and knowing your location. And then for bigger maps, you're either going to have no idea where it is as it's going to be moving very slow, or it's going to be flying down a hallway chasing one of you. I feel like the Rev excels on all map sizes, as if you're playing on a small one, the Rev has a higher chance to detect your equipment at the beginning of a hunt. On larger maps, it's either going to be very hard to find or make entire hallways deadly. Overall, probably one of the most lethal ghosts in the game. Next we have Demon, and this might be a little surprising, but I have to give the Demon credit as there's so much room for unpredictability and danger. Its ability to initiate a hunt at any sanity threshold is very powerful. Although this ability isn't used very often, Just the pure potential for early chaos and lethality gives it a load of credit. But also consider that the demon isn't really that hard to survive, as once you get a crucifix down, the crucifix's range is increased. The real threat is at the start of the match, and just hope you survive long enough to get a crucifix down. Next we have the Oni, which is pretty easy to identify, but don't be fooled by this. Onis will be more active and will usually perform a lot of ghost events. And let's also hope you don't walk into one of these ghost events, as it will drain 20% of your sanity. These ghost events are going to be deadly later into the game as well, as a ghost might do a ghost event outside of the ghost room and then initiate a hunt very shortly after. You really need to keep tabs on where the ghost is and have a backup plan in case the ghost cuts off your escape route. Next we have the Banshee, and it can be very dangerous given how unpredictable it is. Really, you just have to stay very close to a crucifix and just pray that you're not the target. A pretty similar ghost is the Wraith, which has the most lethal ability in the game in my opinion, as the Wraith can just teleport to you and then immediately start a hunt. Now for both of these ghosts, you can carry a crucifix around, but then you're removing some of the safety from the ghost room or adjacent area. And both of these ghosts have a huge danger zone, as they can virtually hunt from anywhere in the map depending on where you are. These ghosts kind of require you to move around a lot. Make sure you're near a crucifix, and it can be hard to hide from these, especially the Wraith, as you don't want to just be in a hiding spot outside of a hunt and then it teleport to you and then kill you. And for both of these, it's just they are so chaotic and completely unpredictable, and this behavior is pretty unavoidable as well. The Banshee is always going to be following its target, and the Wraith is just going to keep teleporting to people, making them both very dangerous. Next we have the Raiju, and this ghost has very strong abilities, as if there's electronic equipment turned on near the ghost, it will allow it to hunt sooner, and during the hunt, it will be much faster. The first hunt will also probably catch you off guard, as you'll probably still have electronic equipment on near the ghost when you're testing for stuff. It's a pretty dangerous ghost, and you just need to be very careful. Next we have the Mimic, and it's somewhat high on this list as there's a lot of potential for very dangerous situations, whether it attacks you early or it mimics a fast ghost and then hunts. Just the unpredictability and danger potential I feel like is pretty high, and although it can be easy to figure out with its ghost orb shenanigans, its ability to mimic a dangerous ghost is completely unavoidable. And with this ghost, you're just relying on the fact that you hope you get lucky and it doesn't throw too many curveballs at you. Next we have the Mare, and it might seem crazy that it's this high up on the list, but I really do not like the Mare. It's one of the hardest ghosts to identify purely based off abilities, and it can be a bit dangerous too, as the Mares will roam frequently to darker rooms, and its abilities are just too subtle and inconsistent to test for. And anyone who's played this game for a while probably can relate to why I don't like this ghost. Next on this list we have the Twins, as this ghost is very unpredictable and dangerous, and you might notice a pattern with some of these top ghosts. Now the Twins isn't too hard to identify, but it has a wide range for interactions and hunts, and this ghost can have a lot of moments of lethality. Combined with the fact that it can be fast or slow, it can hunt from an unexpected place and catch you completely off guard and quickly kill you if you're not ready. Where it will hunt from is completely unpredictable, so you're just gonna have to hope you get lucky with your crucifix placements, or be ready for it to start a hunt and run away to a hiding spot. In this last ghost, I'm gonna have to put the Moroi up here, and with good reasoning as to why it's so dangerous. It has an ability where it can curse a player through the spirit box, which drains their sanity faster. Not to mention, as your sanity gets lower, the Moroi will become more powerful. It will speed up, and its max line of sight speed will be insane. The Moroi's top speed is even faster than a Revenant with line of sight. And bigger maps are simply going to be a death trap, as this ghost is just going to be way too hard to survive if you're not prepared. You simply can't afford giving the Moroi too much line of sight, or it's just going to be too late. Not to mention its speed changing can sometimes throw you off on what the ghost might actually be. The Moroi ranks so high because it's guaranteed that as time goes on in each match, the Moroi is going to get stronger. You can't really afford to get too much line of sight with this ghost either, as it will be too dangerous. Combined with its ability to quickly drain a person's sanity getting cursed through the spirit box, It's a recipe for disaster. Not to mention, there's no way to identify if a player is cursed by Moroi unless you have a keen eye and have the sanity monitor on. So, there's my list. As you can see, a lot of these ghosts on this higher end rank so high just because they're unpredictable and have deadly abilities. I feel like the categories I chose did a great job of covering every basis, as some ghosts are going to be way harder during hunts than investigating and vice versa. And I feel like these higher ghosts, for the most part, are both deadly and hard to figure out, which I feel like is a pretty fair way to measure how hard a ghost is. But anyway, here's my sheet with all my data. This is sorted from highest to lowest total points, so you can see how each ghost scored in each category and the total points for each one. And as I mentioned before, a lot of these ghosts score very similarly. Overall, I feel like this did a decent job at trying to discover what the hardest ghost is in Phasmophobia. If you like this kind of video, make sure to leave a like or even comment, and thank you so much for watching.